Hello, everybody, and welcome to your MTGA summer newsletter for 2023. It is good to finally have it feel like summer outside. We're in the midst of our first little heat wave where we're seeing some triple digits, some weather up in the 90-degree range. Finally, it's warmed up out here. It's been the coolest, rainiest year we've had in a while, and it's nice to be back to a little bit more normal, which is pretty great for us as well as the grape, as long as things continue within a certain range. I have an immense amount of updates. As usual, and some of you now know we stopped doing just the full written newsletters via email because frankly there's so much moving and shaking that we have going on that it turns into too long, didn't read really fast. So there is a little bit more information in that email on a few kind of the main topics that I wanted to cover in this newsletter, but we're going to get into a little bit more nitty-gritty detail with everything that we have going on through this video. If you're a little crunched for time, you can look at the description of the video. Each topic is going to be time-stamped. That way you can fast forward or adjust to the topic that is most pertinent to you. Of course, if you have a little extra time to kill, whether you're commuting in the car, just kicking back, relaxing with a glass of wine at home on the couch, whatever the case may be, this will be a great one-stop shop for everything that we have going on this summer, as well as we get into the fall. We have some very cool, very special announcements to get into. The first thing I do want to cover is this growing season. We alluded a little bit to it already, but it is something that is, for us personally, looking phenomenal. And I think a lot of winemakers would agree at this point is that obviously many folks have heard about this super rainy season that we've had, a very mild spring, and so far a very mild summer up until literally this week. And for us, that bodes so well. There are a lot of folks that are a little worried because with the cooler start to the year, that means that things have been pushed back by maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks for some folks. It was even longer than that until we've had this little stretch of heat that's rolling through. And with that, that means it's going to extend the harvest season later into the fall. It is one of those things that is kind of this double-edged sword, because if the weather stays this consistent and it stays nice, you elongate the growing season, you can build more flavor, more complexity into the wine because the grapes are just out there doing their thing. You don't have to hit the panic button like we did last year with that giant heat spike that really caused some issues with the 2022 season for some folks. And consistency is everything. Right now, we get questions all the time. How's the growing season looking? How's the crop looking? And we constantly say, ask us in a month. Because we're about that 6-week-ish time period away from when grapes are going to start coming in. And as we get closer to that point, we're going to have a much better idea of what this vintage is going to be all about. Now, there are a couple ways that it can go. One, it stays relatively consistent as it has been. Maybe this heat continues. We got another week of 90 to 100 degree weather that's ahead of us. Maybe it cools back off a little bit. In either of those situations, we're probably looking pretty good, as long as it doesn't get too hot and it doesn't get too cool as we roll into the fall months. That nice consistency is what we're looking for. We basically want this portion of the growing season to be the diesel engine, just consistent. It's you're hauling things and you just need it to go and move forward. And as long as there aren't too many big peaks or giant valleys to go through, it makes that drive a whole lot easier. So that's really all we want from this part of the season is just consistency. We want the weather to warm up a little bit. We don't want it to be too hot. That being said, there's plenty of water in the ground. The reservoirs are full from this last epic rainy season that we had. So even if it does have some warm stretches to it, we're pretty much prepared to withstand those. Now, the exceptions and where the issues can come into play are these heat spikes. Much like the 2022 season, we had that crazy heat spike right in the middle of harvest where it's 115 for 5 days straight. It rained on the other end of that. It was just a mess. And if something like that happens where we have extreme heat for an elongated period of time, particularly at the wrong time like last year, that's what's going to potentially cause issues. Now, we don't exactly have a crystal ball to look into to tell us whether or not that's going to happen, but that is kind of at the forefront of our minds because that's what happened last year. It's right behind us in the rearview mirror. We know exactly what we had to do to get through that. So we know how to operate, but it's something that we'd like to avoid this year. The other side of that coin is that if it continues to stay a little bit cooler and the season gets extended late into October and into November, a couple of things can happen. One, if rain comes back early and it starts raining throughout harvest, that means things are going to be very susceptible to molds, mildews, all kinds of potential issues. It also literally waters down the complexity of the fruit that you're trying to pick because those vines are just uptaking that water and watering down the berries. It's literally what happens. And if you have those issues, now sorting becomes a problem, operating tractors in the vineyards becomes a problem. It could be like a 2011 all over again, where you have this cool, rainy year that maybe it doesn't quite get to the ripeness that we're used to getting. We'll see. These are the kind of the two things that we're looking at where we would much rather see this season be consistent and be a little bit warmer right now to help kick things along, not to extend things too far into the fall where it could potentially rain and cause even more issues out in the vineyard. So right now, as the growing season is moving forward, I think most people are very, very happy with it, very, very optimistic. I personally, for MTGA and what we do, this bodes so well for our wine style. This is one of those years where if it continues on this trend, this is a line it up to knock it down. This will be a banner year for MTGA because this is the type of weather that I love to work with and around when it comes to a growing season. This is exactly, I couldn't ask for better conditions personally. Very selfishly, this is exactly what I want. For other folks, maybe not so much. It's totally dependent on your style, how you're trying to operate. But for me, the growing season is looking beautiful. Yields are looking great. Quality should be there. Everything is just trucking right along. Could not be happier, again, with this growing season and what we have going on. Now, outside of the growing season, we have a few other things that we're tackling as we get into the fall. We do have a bottling run coming up. We have a few different wines that we're bottling. The remaining of our 2021 wines, except for our Grand Cask Cabernet, that'll still age for about another 6 months in bottle. We'll bottle that in February. That gets a full 3 years. A full 2.5 years in oak, and then we release it after that. So that's definitely a long haul for that particular wine. But our Napa Valley Merlot, our single barrel Merlot, we have our red blend as well as our Napa Valley Cabernet that are getting bottled up. So right now we are quite literally a month away. If you're watching this anytime between basically July 18th and July 25th, we are quite literally 1 month away from this bottling run. I'm in the midst of confirming supply orders, making sure that we've got everything set up and ready to go for it. It is kind of my last ditch of heavy lifting to do before we get into the harvest season. And the 2021s that are remaining are just tasting phenomenal. We dialed in all those blends a couple of weeks ago. I'll go back through and check that work in about a week and a half just to make sure that everything is tasting exactly where I want it. And then that second week of August, we start bringing all those wines up to tank and get ready for that bottling run. It's going to be so happy to get the rest of these 2021s in bottle. They are tasting just phenomenal. They are in such a great spot. That was another one of those years, after a pandemic, after a fire year, and before that big heat wave, that we had in 2022. The 21s are just gorgeous wines. It took them a little bit longer to ripen up and get to where we wanted them to be. They're a little riper, a little bit more intense than I would say the prior years, but it's something that is just fine. I'd say it's very akin to what our 2019 Merlot is tasting like, maybe even our 2016 Merlot. It plays very much in that realm for those of you that have had some of those past releases. That's what you can expect from the remainder of these 2021 wines that we're going to be bottling up. Now, I mentioned that Grand Cask that's going to stay in barrel. And this is a wine that we've been teasing. Some of you have tasted it out and about. If you've come out to the winery, we've also taken it on the road with our last couple of tasting trips around the country. This is a wine that we are going to officially be launching just before Thanksgiving. It will likely be the first week of November when we start talking about this wine and getting it out into the world. There is a link in the description if you're interested in this Grand Cask Cabernet. There's a whole sign-up sheet that we have for it. It is something that, because of the 2020 vintage just being what it was, we own this. The first release of it is only 1 barrel. It is my hope to make a little bit more of it as the years go on, but it is meant to be just the best iteration of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon that I can make. We've picked out some very special barrels for this project. It comes from an awesome vineyard that I've been working with for 14 years. Such a great grower and a great relationship that we've had. And it is hopefully going to be kind of the next step in the MTGA Cabernet program. It is going to be something very, very different than what MTGA has done before. There's going to be this Grand Cask label is something that is very new and different as a result, because we really wanted to kind of put it up on that pedestal. And it's going to be something that we simply don't make enough of to go into our normal wine club shipments, which is why we're kind of doing the release a little bit differently. The release will happen one time a year. It'll be available in 3, 6, or 12 packs. There are a lot of additional perks that come along with that, with those different tiers, whether it's a little bit of MTGA swag, shipping being included, things of that nature. We'll have all that information down on that link within kind of the sign-up sheet for those of you that are interested in it. The Grand Cask Cab is meant to be, think of what we've done with our single barrel Merlot over the years, and that really being our flagship wine, what many of you really enjoy the most of any of the wines that we produce. It's taking that mentality of single barrel Merlot winemaking and adapting it to our Cabernet Sauvignon program. There are a lot of changes between those two segments of our program, but also a lot of similarities in how we do things. One of those big differences, and this is something that we're going to be adapting for many of our wines, is really trying to give you a little bit more insight and knowledge into how these wines were made, what barrels were used, and the production techniques and kind of the trials and tribulations of really making these wines year in and year out. And this new wine will have its own website and information and all kinds of details that you'll be able to dive into to really understand what it takes to make this wine and get it from grape to bottle over the course of at least 36 months of aging, if not more than that. So it's going to be a super, super special wine. You can click the link in the description of the video as well as in the email that we sent. That'll sign you up for that list. You can check if you know that you're going to want to snag some of those bottles, either in that 3, 6, or 12 pack quantity. You can check that box and call it good. Or if you just know you want to have more information, you can just sign up for that mailing list and we'll make sure that we keep in touch from there. But there'll be a lot more information on that wine, what to expect, and when it'll be shipping out during the first week of November this year. All right. As kind of an aside to that side project, we have a new Cabernet as well that we've been playing with. Our Napa Valley Cabernet is meant to be MTGA's kind of great staple. The Grand Cask is going to be one that really takes that Napa style of Cabernet and just elevates it to a whole new level. Now, this is kind of an interesting dynamic that we have, is that there's a certain amount of Cabernet that we, in essence, have to buy. A minimum, if you will. It's something that if I don't buy this amount of Cabernet, the grower simply might not work with me. It's a lot of how contracts kind of get done, is that you have to take X amount of fruit because they don't want to try and sell grapes to 6 or 7 different people. They want 1 or 2 people maybe to work with the entire vineyard. So we've been purchasing half of this vineyard for the last few years. And that means that our Cabernet production is more than what we would typically make under the MTGA label. Some of that goes into the Napa Valley Cabernet that many of you are familiar with. Some of that goes into the Grand Cask that we just talked about. The last bit, there's going to be a new label that we're coming out with that is going to be a very different style of wine. There's not a single person in Napa, maybe even Northern California, that's making Cabernet the way we are with this new project. It's something that we're making 100 cases of. It was very much inspired by another winemaker in France who I had the pleasure of meeting last year that was doing just some amazing things with big red wines in the south of France. Something that was just one of those kind of aha moments of, wow, this is something that can really be done and make these really special wines and have them really stand out of the crowd. I'm super, super excited to share this label with everybody. We're going to be announcing it during that first week of November as a part of this Grand Cask release. And it's going to be very easy to get access to. If you purchase a bottle of the Grand Cask, you get access to this other wine. That's how it's going to work. There's going to be that little bar to entry because it is meant to be something very, very special. It's going to be very, very different. The Grand Casks and this new Cabernet that we're going to be roping into this production is very much going to be kind of this yin and yang and this difference between what kind of historically Napa Cabernet has become and something completely different that nobody else is doing. And I'm not going to spoil it too much just yet. This is something that I've been so proud of and so excited for over the last year because of just how different it is from literally everything else that the world of Napa winemaking is offering right now. It's something that I think is not necessarily going to be the next big trend, but something that people are craving within just wine in general. And that's something that I'm so excited. I'm basically speechless. I went through and tasted through all these barrels as a part of the blending process because we're bottling up this wine in this next bottling run as well at the beginning of August. And I just couldn't be more happy with where it is. It was one of those things where it was not, I wouldn't say taking a shot in the dark and not knowing where this wine was going to end up, but because it's such unique production techniques, I wasn't sure if it would get to where I needed it to be to bottle it when I wanted to bottle it and have it ready for this fall. There's a little bit more of a strict timeline that I'm working on with this particular wine that really this production style leans towards, and everything, the dominoes have just been lined up and just been running and going down in an amazing way. It's something that I think it's very rare within the wine industry these days where innovation happens. It's here and there. You see more so kind of the big names and big brands, the Finneys and the Wagners and kind of the big players in the wine industry do this kind of stuff. This is not something that's going to become tens of thousands of cases or hundreds of thousands of cases in some of those situations with some of those names I've mentioned. But it is something that is going to be very unique, very different, and I think very special as well. It's going to be a very cool iteration on Napa Valley Cabernet and the possibilities with it. So there's going to be a lot more information for that as well. That is going to be, as soon as we're working on the label design right now, we're going to start posting that and sharing that with the world come August. And then as we get into the fall, we'll share more and more details about that wine and everything that it includes. So between the Grand Cask and this new Cabernet Project, definitely keep an eye on our social media networks. Be sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube for more of the tasting notes and kind of production information. Also our podcast. Also, keep an eye on your email inboxes, whether you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, whatever the case may be. We'll make sure that we kind of pepper this information everywhere. That way you're in the loop with what we have coming down the pipeline. Speaking of which, we do have, if you're watching this, you're likely watching this on YouTube or one of our social networks. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow our social networks. We're trying to do more and more video content between tasting notes, cellar updates, newsletters such as this. We did also start the Wind Up podcast, which we put out every Wednesday morning. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I think Amazon carries it. Basically, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it. You can find that if you're watching this on YouTube. There's a couple different segments to it. The YouTube channel always has the video option. So if you're into having the video up and running, you can have that. Or if you just want to download it and listen to it, that works as well too. Be sure to like and subscribe to it. And share it with your friends. Any promotion of it is widely appreciated and helps kind of work with the algorithms of getting it out there and getting more listeners and followers, and hopefully introducing people to a little bit more of what the wine industry is all about. It's a podcast that we cover the wine business. We really talk a lot of dollars and cents about what it takes to make a wine business go around. We talk about production. We talk about additives and extracts that are used in wine. We talk about the growing season. We talk about logistics. We talk about ratings and reviews. We have a full Q&A segment at the end of every month where any questions that you all ask, they get included into that episode as well, and also help us drive the content of this podcast. It's something that I really want to be a two-way street and provide great context and great information and hopefully entertain you as well when it comes to just kind of the overall broad scope of the wine industry. We definitely go into a lot of things that a lot of wine businesses would not necessarily want to have shared. We're not airing any dirty laundry, but there's a lot of stuff that is kind of like the Wizard of Oz. It's kind of the pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. These are just grapes, and we make fabulous wine. And frankly, there are a lot of producers where that's not the case. There are a lot of folks that don't want you to know what actually can go into making a wine. And I want to try and shine a little bit more of a spotlight onto that, largely because I'm a firm believer that an educated consumer is a better one. The more knowledge you have, the more choices you can make when it comes to what businesses you support, what wine you enjoy to drink. And realistically, I think it enhances, personally, my overall enjoyment of wine, just in general, and very much can do the same thing for you. So be sure to check out our Wind Up podcast. You'll see a little digitized version of myself. For those of you that are familiar with our Cabernet Franc label, where it was like that 16 or 8-bit label, that'll be what you look for. It'll be Wind Up Podcast. You should be able to find it again on any network where you get your podcasts. If you have a hard time finding it, you can send us a note through our DMs or drop us a line, and we'll try and figure out how to get it syndicated out to other networks as well. Now we got to talk a little bit of business. And I know none of you are going to like hearing this, but guess what? It's already time to start thinking about holiday gifting. This is something that we always get a little bit, myself included, we always get a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to this. For those of you that do any corporate gifting, client gifting, or just for friends and family in general, we are starting and opening up orders for custom etching, large formats, and all kinds of things. So if you need to start ironing out all that information, do drop us a line. There's an email link within the body of the email that we sent to you that you can send us a quick note. There's also a link and email address in the description of this video so you can get a hold of us, and we can start putting that together. Everything from custom large formats, we're talking your 3, 6, 9 liters and above, or if it's magnums and 750s where you just want to etch a custom gift message onto the side of the bottle, that's all stuff that we can do. It does take a little bit of time to get all this done. The custom etching stuff can actually take up to 2 or 3 months, especially as we get closer to the holiday season, which means that it might not arrive in time. So if we get all these kind of pre-ordered in July and August, that means we can have it ready come November into the rest of the holiday season for gift giving purposes. So if you are in need of any custom etching, large formats, need to start organizing client gifts and things of that nature for the rest of the year, we'll get you all taken care of. Be sure to get in touch, and we'll give you a complete rundown of what wines we have available, what variations, what sizes that we have available for all those wines, and all that good stuff. So we'll get you all taken care of. Last and certainly not least, we know a lot of you have been planning and working on getting back out to Napa, whether it be this fall or into the winter months. If you are in need of any recommendations, any other reservations, other wineries to visit, or you just need to schedule a tasting with us out in the cave, please drop us a line. You can head to our website, mtgawines.com. There's a link at the very top that says Taste with the Winemakers. You can just book everything right then and there. If it's more convenient, you can always shoot us an email or dive into any of our DMs through our social networks. We'll get in touch and we'll get a tasting scheduled for you. We can take care of groups pretty much of any size, shape, whatever the case may be, and we'll fill in all the details for you as we get that all ironed out. If you need transportation, again, any other recommendations when you're in the valley, or just good times to come out and avoid maybe some of the more touristy weeks and times around the valley, we can also kind of give you some guidance on that as well. You'll have the pleasure of sitting down with either myself or Brittany in the cave, tasting through a bunch of wines. We do barrel tastings. We do all kinds of good stuff. This is all relatively new over the last couple of years as we finally have a defined, tasting space for us out at the winery. So we've really tried to do everything that we can to really enhance kind of our overall hospitality experiences and, what you get to do when you come out to the winery and hang out with us and drink wine in the cave. So we would love to see you. If we don't have the chance to see you at the winery, we do have some travel planned for this fall. We are ironing out some trips out to Alabama. We'll be in Birmingham for a little while. We're actually going to be in Texas for a good swath. We're trying to squeeze in a trip to Florida, as well as out to Atlanta, Georgia area. We may also be out in northern and southern the Carolinas this winter as well. So for those of you that have considered or have any interest in hosting your own wine events around the country, we are starting to dial those in for this November through the end of the year, as well into next year in 2024. So you can, same thing as scheduling a tasting, you can just get in touch with us through our website via email, text, carrier pigeon, whatever. Actually, probably not carrier pigeon, that might not get here. So go ahead and use any of the other ways to get a hold of us. We'll get in touch and give you a full rundown of what the options are, what availability we have, and how to make things happen from an event standpoint. We'll take care of it. No problem. I think that's it. That was a barrage of information. We're only like 25 minutes into this. I swear, I thought I was going to be able to do this in like 15. No shot. No shot. There's just too much going on. It's a great problem to have. We've got new wines. We've got new experiences. We've got large formats. We got this amazing growing season that we're working with right now. There's so many great things that are happening within kind of just the wine business right now, outside of the normal trials and tribulations of being a small business in this industry, that it makes it just so worth it. So with that, I always try and end these with just a huge thank you for everyone. Especially if you made it to this part of the video, we appreciate you tuning in and learning a little bit more about what we have going on. We can't thank you enough for your support, whether you are in our wine club, on our mailing list, whether you've been out to the winery lately or we've seen you out on the road. It means the world. Every bottle of wine that we send out really allows us to continue doing what we're doing, and hopefully continues to provide great wine, great information, and some great entertainment for you, your friends, your family, and all the wine lovers in your life. So thank you so much for tuning in, for all the support. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as check out our Wind Up podcast if you want a little bit more nitty-gritty information on the wine industry specifically. Any questions on any of the wines that we mentioned, release dates, wine club information, anything else, feel free to reach out anytime. We're always here to help you out and give you a little bit more information. Cheers. Have an amazing rest of the week, and hopefully we'll see you either out here in Napa or on the road soon.